Get ready.
All right, here we are, Facebook Friday Live, and back by popular demand, we have Dr. Lauri Marbas to answer any and all questions that you may have. And it seems like there's never a scarcity of questions, right, Laurie?
No, there's not. Keeps me on my toes for sure.
It keeps all of us on our toes. But I hope you're all having a great Friday. It is, gosh, it's January 26th. Laurie, where does the time go?
I really don't know, but it's been a very fast first month of the year for sure. Amazing.
It has. I mean, I can't believe that we're almost into February. It's just jaw dropping to me as I get older, how the years seem to go by even faster.
Well, we have more to reflect on, so I think that's why we feel it's going by faster.
Yeah. My brother said, yeah, it's funny how the days seem long, but the years just go by so fast.
Yeah, absolutely. I would agree to that 100%.
Yeah. Please let us know where you're tuning in from. Love to know where you're at. So, Laurie, while people are kind of getting settled in, why don't we start out with this? So I recently had some blood work done, and like B12 and vitamin D and ferritin, A1C, omega-3s. And I would love to share my numbers with everybody and then get your thoughts, because on some of them, I'm according to the spectrum, I'm in the desirable range. And in others, I'm a little low. Okay. So I'd love to talk to you about that and then see where it takes us.
Okay. I have not seen these, by the way. So
no.
They're all new to me.
This is all brand new. All right. So let's start with a supplement that I think that you would agree that everybody on a whole food plant-based diet should be taking, and that's B12.
Yes, that is my non-negotiable supplement on a plant-based diet.
Yep. And so before I share my numbers, why is that a non-negotiable for you?
Because there is nowhere in the plant-based world, the plant-based diet, right, that we can get an adequate, reliable source on a daily basis. And especially a lot of my patients in particular are taking medications that decrease absorption. And as we get older, there's a decreased absorption. So, for example, if you're on metformin or any like PPIs for heartburn, which are over the counter, people sometimes don't even think about those as medications. They will not even tell me, but I'll see that they have heartburn. I'm like, are you on meds? They're like, oh yeah, I'm like,
Right.
So, B12 is only made by bacteria. It's not made by plants or animals. And I always tell people, well, you're happy. You can go and drink from the stream or eat some dirt every day. Okay. But at this, I'm sure we want
you get some Giardia.
Exactly. So, I recommend a particular amount, usually 500 to 1,000 micrograms daily, because that's where I get most of my patients. I can get them up to a level that I feel pretty confident they won't have any symptoms of B12 deficiency, which is a little bit higher than the lower range that you'll see on blood tests. And I did an entire workshop all about plant-based labs because I get so many questions about these. I have an entire ebook about it. And because it's just, they can get it at my website, but it's because I get that question so often. I was like, I'm just going to compile everything. I'm just going to make it very easy for them. But yeah, I like to see the blood work over 500 because even for, the 20 years I've been a doctor, I've seen people with B12 deficiency symptoms less than 500, but it seems pretty across the board. And I've seen thousands of plant-based patients at this point. 500 seems to be the sweet spot.
So when you say you've seen people below 500 with B12 deficiency syndromes. What are some of the, or symptoms?
Yeah.
Symptoms. What are some of those symptoms? What does that look like?
So it could be a few different things. As you get closer to that 250, which is usually the bottom of the normal range, you can see tingling, especially in the feet, the fingers. You might see some what we call macrocytosis, where the red blood cells seem a little bit larger on their blood panel. You can see just fatigue, memory issues. Those are the main ones for sure. But mostly it'll be fatigue, difficulty concentrating, and some tingling as you get a little bit closer to that 250. And, I check some other things like homocysteine and methylmalonic acid as a secondary determination to make sure that they have sufficient B12. So, that's typically what I'm doing.
And so how often are you, when you ask people to get their blood work done, are you seeing B12 levels below 250 or below 500? Like, how would you say it's 25%, 50%?
I would say closer to 30 to 40% because I don't think people are paying attention to it. And until they get it actually, or they might take it and they're like, oh, I forgot for the last 2 weeks, or I traveled and I didn't take it with me, or whatever. There's, daily excuses. What was interesting, I think some people are just misinformed and they've been told by others that, oh, you don't need B12, you can eat nutritional yeast, or you could do this. I was like, no, let's not mess around with that, because B12 deficiency can have permanent, problems. And so what I like to do is really just explain to people why it's important. And it's a really tiny amount. And it's much more than the RDA because we only absorb a small amount already. So you're going to need more than what the recommended daily allowance is to get that. So again, it's 500 to 1,000 micrograms, closer to 1,000 micrograms. For example, I take 1,000 micrograms daily. My levels are typically between 700 and 800 pretty reliably year on year. And so, and I don't take any medications that inhibit its absorption. And I'm in my mid 50s, so I don't think it's because I'm older.
And do you have a particular brand or that you recommend, or that you take yourself?
Yeah, I like the Complement brand. If someone's wanting to look for a full comprehensive, they have a few choices. That's a very reliable, great company. Terraseed is another good one. Others who are looking for more cost efficient, Nature Made is a very reliable brand that you can get anywhere. I'm pretty sure Walmart carries it. So there's a few different ones, but those three for sure.
Yeah, great. So now I'm going to hit you with my number.
Okay.
All right.
All
but
right.
First, let me say, so the last time that I was tested for B12 was probably 4 or 5 years ago.
Okay.
And I was 950.
That's
right?
great.
Which was great.
Perfect.
My life has gotten busy. I literally am not. I take it like maybe once every 2 weeks. It's just not at the top of my list of things to do.
Okay.
And so I had no idea where I'd be. And my level was 348.
Okay. You need to take it more often.
I completely, I totally. And I have a brother, and this is what really prompted me to get tested. Is he did a screening and his was 248 or something like that.
Wow. Okay.
And he was like, man, I can't believe it. So that prompted me, and I'm sitting at, obviously 348. So I will consistently now take my B12.
Great.
I think 5 years ago when it was 950, I was like, oh, I'm good. I'm at the high range of where I want to be.
Right. And your liver does store B12 for, they say upward of 3 years. But I think if you're plant-based for so long, you can't necessarily rely on that, because if you're taking supplements regularly, that's probably why it's elevated. So I just want to highlight that for people for sure. But I had one patient that had been vegetarian for most of her teenage years into her 20s. She was getting closer to 30, and she was having really severe symptoms. And She didn't know what it was because she had gone more vegan, not necessarily plant-based. So we talked about the quality of her diet. But then when I checked her B12, it was like below 200. And we started supplementing, and her life quality dramatically shifted. And, she had seen other doctors who weren't aware of the nutritional impacts, that we need to be aware of as a plant-based diet. Not that the plant-based diet's not phenomenal, and it should be the diet of choice. But there are some things that, traditional doctors just aren't aware of, like the B12 issue. It's not a typical thing you check for, but they should.
Yeah.
Even omnivores are running low on B12. That's a given as well. So again, just her quality of life dramatically improved. And so that was really
that's good to know. And this is a question that I actually was going to ask, and Addie V asked it as well. But can you take too much? Because it, like on that panel there, it shows, you get into the too much range, like at 1250 to 1500. Yeah. Is there any issues with having too high of a B12 level?
Yeah, I think the research is still kind of scattered on that. Typically B12 is considered not an issue because you're going to urinate out any extra because it's a water soluble vitamin. But I would also err on the side of caution and just try to keep in between that 5 to 1100 range, and you should be fine. Again, there's no reason to take more than necessary. It's just like anything else. We don't know the long-term consequences of over supplementing, at least right now, that is reliable research that I would say it's not just an association, an actual causation. But there are some things like beta carotene, vitamin A, vitamin E. These are things you don't want to be taking regularly in a supplement form because those have been shown to be cause some increased risk for certain types of cancers and such. So yeah, so as far as B12 that I'm aware of, maybe some preliminary research saying it's not such a good thing, but I wouldn't say it's hard, fast rule. But you don't just get tested, make sure what you're taking, get on a regular regimen, and it's really fairly simple.
Yeah. Okay. Good stuff. Is 2.5 milligrams the same as, I think it's 2.5 grams is the same as 250 milligrams.
So there's micrograms,
right? That's right. Micrograms,
which is smaller than, 1,000 micrograms, 1 milligram.
Yep. Yep. Good. That's right. So we got a lot of questions coming in here. I'm trying to figure out, I don't want to get too sidetracked off my blood work here, but trying to see what actually dovetails and complements it nicely.
Sure.
Let me see here. So I'm going to go on to the next one. So ferritin. Is ferritin, I know is ferritin the same thing as iron?
So this is what you need to think about with your iron. So what I typically do is do an iron panel. So you'll see an iron, which is the amount of iron that's available in the blood right now. Then you have your total iron binding capacity, and you have iron saturation. So think about the iron binding capacity as, like those storage units you'll see people go and buy to put their extra stuff in. That's your hotel space, right? That's your space for storage. So the higher that number, the more vacancies you have. Okay. Then you have your saturation, which is a percentage of the iron in the storages. Then the ferritin is the actual very good important number. And what happens here is this is a protein that attaches the iron, and that's what's stored in the storage facility. So the iron in itself is what's available for use, and then you have your storage. So I always check ferritin. I'd rather actually check ferritin over the iron panel because this really tells me where you're sitting as far as your total iron storage. Again, because women, for example, who are menstruating very heavily or have something else going on, maybe they're not absorbing iron very well, could be a host of things. That really tells me a lot, especially if I have women who are, I'm just saying women because they're losing blood regularly, is fatigue, or if they have hair falling out. So if I get questions, people, have gone to a plant-based diet or any particular issues, hair falling out, or fatigue, or you get restless leg syndrome. If I check their ferritin and it's less than 50, that's a sign that I need to do some additional work. Is this menstruating loss? Is there absorption issues? Are they losing it through their GI tract? Is there something else going on that may be a little bit more serious thing we need to investigate? And then we will do iron supplementation. I like Solgar. It's kind of a slow absorption, and so that one works nicely. But you want to make sure you know why, right? Is it because I just haven't been eating iron-rich foods, or Again, maybe they're losing more than they're actually replacing, can you replace with the diet. So that is really an important thing to check, because
Well,
ferritin can give you a lot of information.
Yeah, I mean, I think I remember reading, and probably was 3 years ago, that one of the greatest deficiencies is iron deficiency.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering, for our audience, what are some of the best whole plant-based foods that we can be eating to boost up those iron and ferritin stores?
Yeah, so those dark green leafies are a big one. Beans also have some phenomenal. There's whole grains. I have an entire list. Again, I get this question regularly, but really you can eat these foods. Just know that you want to be mindful of not drinking it maybe with some tea or some other things that may keep your absorption low. Try to, there's some debate on whether this is actually useful, but iron rich foods also with vitamin C rich foods to help with absorption, that may or may not be as helpful as we think. But again, it's not harmful, because again, you're getting a different variety of foods and it's all good. But at the end of the day, I really need to understand the root cause so that we address the root cause along with, getting your stores back up where we need them to be.
And so let's say somebody comes into you and their ferritin stores are in the low range.
Yeah.
Is your first course of action to say, let's make sure you're getting, 3 servings of green leafies, you're doing your beans, whole grains, and make sure you're doing it with some sort of a vitamin C rich food to help absorption? Or do you say, let's try a supplement?
It depends on how low it is, right? So if I have someone who's symptomatic and they're, below, let's say, the quote unquote normal range, which I think typically hits around 16, 15, I will put them on a supplement as we're trying to figure out what's going on. Because many times you'll see their red blood cells are smaller. They might be actually anemic. And I do know that especially for women who are kind of this menopause, you can also get really heavy periods during this period of time, and extended period of bleeding. And that can be a really difficult thing. Plus you're going through menopausal symptoms. So that conversation needs to be had. The other piece is if you are over 40, 45, 50, do you want to check a fecal stool to make sure there's no bleeding there? Have you had any GI symptoms? Do you have GIRD symptoms? Make sure there's not some type of peptic ulcer. When I was deployed to the Middle East, when I was active duty, I came back with six ulcers. I thought I was dying. It was so painful, but it ended up being an H. pylori infection that I contracted overseas, and treated it, and I was fine. But there could have been active bleeding there as well. So there's lots of things that you need to be mindful of, and make sure that you address the root cause. Don't just take a supplement and say, "Oh, I'm okay." That's really important.
Yeah. One of the questions we have right here from Pat is, are there any beans that are best for iron?
I think there's some dark, like the kidney beans and some of those darker beans. There's a variety, and it really depends on one. If you have been eating beans, great. Just keep up the variety of beans. But two, if you're kind of new to the plant-based diet and you're not been eating beans, start with lentils, and then ease into kind of the darker, more. The longer that they take to soak, to prep when you're doing, dried bean cooking, those need to be added in last. And so absolutely, tofu, anything that you can get in the bean category on a daily basis, at least half a cup to, if you can do a cup and a half, that's even better. So, and then mix that with those dark green leafies, right? So, trying to get as much of those as you can. That's Essie's prescription regardless, is 6 times a day, with a little vinegar, and off you set and ready to go. For other reasons, obviously the nitrates, but again, there's a variety of things, and mixing your foods throughout the day. And most people are going to get enough iron if you're eating enough calories to sustain a healthy diet. If you're eating in a variety of colors. So again, I wouldn't necessarily, if you are anemic and you determine that, I'm not getting enough, there's an app called Chronometer. So you could put your food that you're taking in daily for about a week and see what your average is. And then you'll see if you're hitting the markers. But again, most of the time, you're probably eating enough. There might be an absorption issue, or you're losing it somewhere. Because most of the time, if I get someone who is eating a whole food plant-based diet and they're not symptomatic, we check ferritin. It's many times fine. But someone it'll prompt me to check it if they're symptomatic and some other things going on.
Yeah. I'm going to take just a quick little break and just say, Pat says, love Rip. How did you get your name? I gather it's a nickname. Keep up the great work. Thank you, Pat. It is a nickname, and I'll tell you about the story, how I got it, in another day. Okay. Yeah. But Laurie, will you explain to people the difference between the iron you get from animals and the iron you get from plants? Because the non-heme versus the heme.
Yeah.
I think that might be important too.
Yeah, so the heme iron is obviously easier to absorb, and you'll hear that from the plant, like, oh, your iron's easier to absorb. But we also don't want too much iron, right? So the non-heme is a little harder to absorb, but it also comes along with more benefits. So there's a balance here that you want to consider. But the heme iron is just more easily absorbed and can cause
and it's from animals.
From animals, right. Yeah. And that can actually come along, obviously, with the cholesterol, saturated fats, and all the things that can cause inflammation. And again, this heme iron can have, in and of itself, some less desirable side effects. But the non-heme comes obviously in the plants. It's also a little bit harder to absorb, but you also don't want as much absorbed at a rapid rate. So again, it comes in a balance. So to go into the physiology of it might be
no, that's okay.
More complicated. So.
No, that's okay. That's okay. But I also have heard and read that one of the big differences with heme iron, your body really can't dump it if you get excessive amounts. With the non-heme, your body can regulate that on its own.
Probably, yeah. You could go into the regulation of the iron in itself. The body will store excess iron in different tissues like the liver, for example, or the heart, and that can be an issue. So again, you don't want to do too much, but I'm trying to remember even when I was checking people who were eating animal-based, just honestly, I don't remember someone, unless they actually had some type of disease like pheochromotosis or something like that, typically the iron was not too high in a sense. But again, I think there's so much to it. It's a balance. It's just.
Okay. So I'm going to share with you my number now, my ferritin number. And it's interesting because I need to go back and find some old blood work to see where I was. But, and I'll start by saying, for everybody out there, there's a range. And the desirable range that I have on this chart I'm looking at is for men is 23.9 on the low end to 336.2 on the high end. So that seems to me, Laurie, like quite a range from essentially 24 to 336. That's quite a spread. And that's for men. And then for women, it's 24 to 307 is what they're showing.
Yeah, and I think it depends on your lab, because I've seen labs even as low as 16 on the ferritin, so in the normal range. Yeah.
And so before I share my number, like, can you explain why such a wide range?
Well, there's going to be varying amounts of body types and needs, and over what people's turnover rate is and everything. So if you're a runner, for example, you might need more iron because there's a higher risk for destruction of the red blood cells. So again, it will just vary person to person, and body type and size, and how much blood you're actually pumping through your body can vary. And so,
So my level was 50 exactly, 50.0.
Perfect.
Which in my report said, you're in the desirable range, but on the low end of the desirable range.
Which is fine. Yeah, you don't necessarily want to be on that higher end range, which you might see omnivores pushing towards that higher end. But they don't typically have the consequences, right? You're not seeing an inflamed liver or anything like that because they're on that higher end. But most of my plant-based eaters are on the lower end of normal. Right. And if you're asymptomatic, that's fine. But, I do encourage my women, if they're especially below 16, I'll supplement, and then we'll start looking. And most of the time they're fatigued and they may have restless leg. Now, if you have someone who has restless leg syndrome, for example, you may want to try and push that ferritin up to around 75. But if they're not symptomatic, it's not a big deal. But it's really interesting studies on iron deficiency and anxiety, because I had a patient who recently said, as we were increasing her ferritin stores and she had like doubled them in over 3 months, she goes, my anxiety is tremendously better. Plus her hair loss quit. And I found some really interesting research that iron deficiency can absolutely have some psychiatric
Right.
consequences. So it was a learning opportunity for myself because I didn't really think about the iron and anxiety.
Okay. Next, we're going to talk about A1C. Before we do, though, let's take a few questions, because I certainly do not want to alienate our incredible audience here. And let's see. Well, we'll start with this one. Addie V. Hey, Laurie, top anti-aging advice in addition to whole food plant-based, of course.
Yeah, so I think exercise and sleep. I really do. I think if you can this is how I like to start the conversation with someone who's new to the plant-based world, right? They're looking to get healthier, but also, typically they're in middle age and they're like panicking now. It's like, oh, things aren't the same as they used to be. I have to work a little bit harder. But if I can get them on a whole food plant-based diet and I can get their sleep in a better state, exercise becomes so much easier. Dealing with stress becomes so much easier. And all of that interplay will help everything with anti-aging. Again, it's just so important to focus also in on the sleep. For example, like I mentioned, my dog had surgery a few days ago and we've been up with her. So she kind of whines sometimes at night. So I get like 5 hours of sleep last night and I'm like, there's a big difference between my normal 8 and the 5. So someone who's chronically sleep deprived, it's hard to focus. I mean, I did that for many years as a resident. But at the end of the day, if you can do your sleep and eating and exercise, I feel like those are the 3 foundational of your stool. And then everything else seems to fall into place.
Just had to show this one from Brittany. Dr. Marbas is the best.
Brittany is my buddy. She's pregnant, by the way. She's due in May 27th, her mama's birthday. Oh, fun.
Let's just hear. How about this one from Pamela? I have arthritis in my knee. I've been doing a juice cleanse for a few weeks. My knee has been sore, swollen for a week. Do you think that is a detox symptom?
No. So really, there's no reason to actually need to even do quote unquote a detox. Your liver does its job already. So this is probably, I'm guessing, if you're having some type of swelling, you might want to look to make sure there's no bursitis or some type of injury there. Again, there could be a host of things to make sure uric acid, if you have a history of gout, a variety of things. Now, again, I don't know what you're consuming in your juice cleanse. You may be taking in some foods that might be causing more of the oxalate issues. So again, I would look at, if you're doing things like spinach and arugula and some other things that have high oxalate count, but also, just go back to a regular whole food plant-based diet. There's no need to do juice cleanses or detoxing.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. Let's do one more question, then we'll get to A1C. I think this is supposed to be Quest. Quest Diagnostics offers a vegan profile of B1, B6, B12, vitamin D, calcium, iodine, iron, omega-3s and 3 and 6, and zinc. Would it be worth it yearly?
So the B1, B6, I never really worry about or check. Your 12, obviously, yes. Vitamin D, yes. Calcium, again, this is like the iron. Like I said, that's what's available for your actual blood, like to use currently. So it's not as helpful. The key thing is making sure your vitamin D level is above 30, and that you are getting in the sun, or at least if you don't want to take a vitamin D supplement, make sure you're getting at least 1,000 to 1,200 milligrams of calcium in your diet on a regular basis. Again, I love soy. I love any type of calcium fortified foods are really helpful. Again, there's beans and whole grains. Again, there's calcium in a wide variety of foods, but I do like the soy products especially the calcium fortified ones, so we can help, build those strong, healthy bones, especially before age 30, when your bone supply, your bone bank is then kind of closed for business, per the research. And that's why we need to really shift the conversation about osteoporosis prevention into our youth and to young women. But as we do get older, hit menopause, perimenopause, you have rates of loss of calcium in your bones, and it accelerates over this perimenopausal time frame. And of course, men are also at risk, typically if you have low testosterone. So those are a little bit less common, around, I think, 25% of the cases of osteoporosis is men, and it's typically a low testosterone issue. But for women, again, there's conversations and things that you can have, and I have an entire really in-depth ebook all about osteoporosis prevention and what to do if you do have it, and talk about particular medications, the side effects, risk profiles, and when you should consider it and when should you not. So anyway, those are some helpful things. But hit that 1,000 to 1,200 milligrams per day, you should be good. The iodine you don't want to do in the blood test. That's not accurate. Iodine will vary through the day. You want to check your iodine as a 24-hour urine collection, and what that means is they give you a jug. You literally have to collect your urine for 24 hours. Yeah. It's not a fun test, but it is really interesting. For example, I've had a few cases of people who are very strict on what we call that SOS-free diet, right? So it's, whole food plant-based, they're sugar, oil, salt-free, which I totally understand. But if we don't have a reliable source of iodine, if you're not doing some of the sea vegetables and nori and some different things like that, or you're using maybe half a teaspoon of iodized salt, most days of the week, what we may see is an iodine deficiency. Again, it may depend on also where you live. Sometimes even the food there that you're getting will have more iodine in the soil. You might get iodine a little bit more reliably. Yeah. And so what you'll see is people develop hypothyroidism. And so they switch to a plant-based diet and they're like, now my thyroid's out of whack. What's going on? I was like, well, let's check your iodine. We get that replaced again through foods or supplements if they want to be more careful. 150 micrograms daily is all you need. You do not need more than that unless you're pregnant. You need around 190. And at that point in time, it goes away. It will cure itself. So
wait. When you say
the hypothyroidism. Yeah.
Really?
So yeah, if it's the cause is that iodine deficiency. Right, now there's also obviously autoimmune like Hashimoto's, which I've had for 28 years now. And so that is an autoimmune deficiency issue, or, that's where the thyroid is deficient because of my thyroid was attacked many years and moons ago. So I will be on medications for the rest of my life. Granted, though, my dosage decreased after going plant-based. Right.
Can you resolve hypothyroidism with or not?
I think so. It depends on the cause, right? So if you can make sure you're getting iodine sufficient, right? And if you eat a whole food plant-based diet, there is some evidence, right? If you're especially early on and it's not, severe, I've definitely absolutely had patients improve. You'll see, for example, if we check certain antibodies, for the thyroid, TPO, and some other ones, those actually decline and their numbers improve. I've certainly had patients do that. The black cumin is another really interesting thing you can consume that has some evidence that it might be helpful also for the Hashimoto's. But it's not always the case. And really, especially if you've been hypothyroid for many, many years. So like I'd been hypothyroid for 15 years or so when I went to the plant-based diet, and it improved to the point that so when you measure for your thyroid, TSH needs to be, there's a varying, but 1 something, you can even be a little bit below 1 to 4.5, somewhere in there, right? So typically you want to be around 2 to 3.5 for most people, not to be symptomatic necessarily of too much or too little. My TSH was 0, meaning that I was taking too much. So I was suppressing the hormone that was telling my thyroid to actually produce hormone. And I ended up having actually get kind of like, it's called like a frozen shoulder, because there's some risk factors for this for women over 40, if you're diabetic and hyperthyroid. And that's how I found out I was hyperthyroid after going plant-based, because I was taking too much medication because of my shoulder. It was a weird, funny story, but got better after 2 more years. But anyway, so yes, you can. And then as far as your omegas, I think I supplement with omegas because I figure it's like an insurance policy until we figure out 100% about measuring. I mean, there's some really interesting conversations around this, but I'm not quite ready to risk brain health and heart health.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people don't eat enough nuts, I think. And even if you did, sometimes, again, it's still low, but we may be measuring it inaccurately. So I just take a little bit. You could take 350 milligrams or so algae omega supplement. And then zinc, yeah, I think that's worth checking. Again, a lot of people are not consuming enough nuts and seeds. Like quarter cup or so a day would be a great way to do that. Pumpkin seeds is how I just get a little handful every day, and my zinc's always been fabulous. So yeah.
What about selenium that's not on that list?
You could do selenium if you want. The only time I would measure selenium if you're supplementing with selenium, or you're eating Brazil nuts every day, because there's such a high dose. I will only tell people like eat one Brazil nut a week, and then there's plenty of selenium, and there's selenium in other nuts and seeds as well, and some other foods. But you can be toxic on selenium, so just be very mindful. And so if you are supplementing with selenium, you'd want to check it because selenium does have its important properties for a few different things.
All right, great. So my HA1C basically is a good indication of if you're pre-diabetic, type 2 diabetic, and how much sugar is hanging on to your red blood cells, right?
Yeah, so it's basically the red blood cells, lifespan's around 120 days. So what happens, think of it as a stickiness, right? So you have the hemoglobin A1C and the stickiness of the red blood cell. So the more blood sugar, your elevated blood sugars, the stickier the red blood cell. And so this is a measure of that. And so you want to be below 5.7 is considered normal. 5.7 to 6.4 is that pre-diabetic range, and above 6.5 would be considered diabetes. Most people who are really insulin sensitive are probably less than 5.4 downward. As you're inching towards 5.5, 5.6, 5.7, I'd have a conversation. It's like, what you doing?
Yeah. Okay, so my number was 5.4.
You're good. I think you're fine.
Yeah. 5.4. I don't know if I've ever had my HA1C done before.
Yeah, so mine typically hits with 4.9 to 5. That's what I've been every single year I've checked it. Yeah.
Okay, so next, let's talk about omega-3s.
Yes,
or at least my numbers. And this is the only one really that I wasn't in desirable or low desirable range. In this one, I was low. So the range here, they have the reference range is 3 to 14. Mm-hmm. And I was sitting at 4.1%.
4.1 is actually pretty good. I'd say, you could try to get even closer to 5. That would be great. But I'm not too worried if I see someone at the 4. I would encourage them to keep doing what they're doing, maybe up a little bit of a supplement. But if you can try to hit above 5, I think that would be great. Yeah. Again, there's some question on if we're measuring this, is there, the DHA is stored in tissue, brain tissue in particular. Well, is it an accurate measurement? It's kind of like that iron and calcium and iodine, right? It's like, are those kind of false indicators because it's actually stored somewhere else? Until again, like I said, I'm really hesitant to not take it. Just take a small amount. It's just, I don't know.
Yeah, well, I agree. So I've never, other than B12, I've never supplemented anything else, but I as an insurance policy, I think I'm going to start taking some DHA EPA. Yeah, it's probably not a bad idea. Yeah. All right, and then the last one that I have here, Laurie, is vitamin D.
Okay.
And my the sunshine vitamin. I'm obviously in Austin, Texas. We get a lot of sunshine. I play a lot of pickleball these days, and my number was 43.6.
Beautiful. Yeah. So. And this will depend on the person too, right? And also if you're outside with sunscreen, if you're a darker, skin tone, you may have a higher risk of being deficient. But what's interesting, so when I lived in Florida, I'd run 10 miles and I was outside every day. Like I love being outside. Like I walked like almost 4 miles to this morning before I was on here with you. And I live in Southern California, mostly sunny. Yeah. I cannot get mine to stay above 30 unless I supplement. And so and I'm about as white gets. So,
Yeah.
and I'm very mindful. I just wear sunscreen mostly, on my face and neck, because I really do want to get as much the natural. But if I stop supplementing, it drops to like upper 20s. And I was like, and so, and the science is important showing, because vitamin D is very important to your immune system. And really interesting research, right, during COVID about vitamin D deficient patients having higher risk of dying or having complications of COVID in the ICU. There is some interesting research. I wouldn't say causal necessarily, but kiddos who are low with vitamin D growing up, higher risk of type 1 diabetes, which is an autoimmune form of diabetes. So, again, for bone health, it's important. So vitamin D is just an all around very important. It's actually kind of a hormone, but anyway, I would recommend people testing that and trying to keep that number above 30. And if you're at higher latitudes, if you're living in the Seattle and Boston type of latitude, you might want to even pay more attention because you're getting less sun.
Good. I just want to show this. If you guys all remember Monty Lang, he was on our Facebook Friday Live a couple Fridays ago. And he says, Rip, Laurie, you guys are the best. I took your advice, Rip, and met with Laurie. She's the best. I am still on the treadmill in my semi-truck, and I've lost 8 more pounds since our podcast. If you guys don't remember, Monty, truck driver, lost over 100 pounds, and all the whole food plant-based. And he says, you're either doing it or you're not. And he's like, if I can do it driving an 18-wheeler, anybody can do it. But he's got a treadmill that he carries in the back of his truck. He prepares all of his meals on Sunday if he has to go out driving for the week. I mean, this is a guy that he has a plan and he follows through on it.
Yeah. Planning is absolutely essential. And he's got a phenomenal story. So my stepdad was a truck driver. So when he heard that, I was like, I totally get what you're talking about. I would be picked up from college from Oregon and driven back home to New Mexico in the back of a rig that my folks like, hey, get a ride with, this couple are driving this. And I'm like, okay. I jump on the back of a truck. So I have driven many, many miles in a semi. And I'll tell you, those are some tight quarters unless you get to them. But that's impressive. So it really is a matter of planning and executing. I've heard all the excuses, but if you say you can't, you won't. But if you can, you will. And it's just like anything. If you ever raised a child, you're not going to like, oh, I can't get up in the middle of the night and feed them. Yes, you can. And you do. You can do anything you put your mind to. It really is important.
It is important. This is a question from Deb. I don't eat any oil. My total cholesterol is 163. LDL is 86. How do you feel about that? And does she need to get it below 70?
So it really depends, Deb, on your total long history of your life. Like, where was your LDL? Like, did you spend 40 years like in the 120s or 130 LDL, right? Or have you always been, under 100? Like, for example, myself, I will range my LDL between 60 to 82, somewhere in that range. Not so worried about it because over the decades that I've checked, it's always been low. And I've done a coronary artery calcium score, and mine is 0. I did that last summer. So again, you could check it as well to see if you have any history of heart disease. It's a 5-minute test. It's really kind of reassuring because I have a really significant family history of heart disease. So that might be another thing too. I would be less worried about that unless there was some history behind it. So again, this is all in context of the person. And that's why it's important to have that kind of personalized approach when you're looking at your numbers and being, what type of interventions do you require? Do you need medications or not? I would be lean on the caution side of probably not, unless you had some significant history, or maybe you had some other risk factors going on too. Like, is your Lp(a) elevated? Is your ApoB above 90? We're looking more at those. Are your inflammatory markers also elevated? Because remember, heart disease is multifactorial. It's not just cholesterol. It's a very important piece, but there's multiple things occurring. Insulin resistance, all these things can promote heart disease, and it's a cascade of events. So I would put that in context of your overall history and clinical situation.
You know what? You stated that so well, Laurie, in looking kind of holistically at the history and everything that's going on. That is so important. If people want to get a hold of you, I know that you're licensed in all 50 states. Is that still the case?
Yep. And DC, 51.
Okay. There you go. But there you go. Just go to www.drmarbas.com and you do personal consultations, right?
Yep, I see people independently. I also have the Healing Kitchen with Brittany Giroudi, who was so sweet a while ago, where they can have all their medical health questions answered regularly. We give them recipes. We do in-depth workshops regularly. It's a really fun, and I have some other programs too. But I can absolutely see you independently.
Great. From CJ wants to know, can eating a plant-based diet help get rid of severe acid reflux? And what can I eat and do to get rid of it without meds?
So again, we go back to the context of the person, right? So first of all, what's causing it, right? Is this because you need to lose a significant amount of weight, or are you eating these foods that are promoting heartburn? So absolutely, you'll see traumatic improvement of heartburn with eating a whole food plant-based diet. Now, if the symptoms continue, there may be a problem with that lower sphincter of your esophagus, right? So that may be relaxed and you may need to have some other interventions there. But again, that's depending on the person. If you have a history of Barrett's esophagus, I would encourage you to follow the GI, recommendations, because you may need medications to prevent that from progressing to like esophageal type cancer. So again, what's the cause? What's your history? How severe is it? Right. And, but weight loss and promoting a whole food plant-based diet will absolutely cure, if not dramatically improve, majority of people with GIRD.
That's exciting. Fun with Fungi says, I'm currently cycling while listening to Rip and Laurie. Speaking of which, Laurie,
that's awesome.
Have you done any movement yet today?
Yeah, no, like I said, I walked almost 4 miles this morning before you and I talked. So
yes. And so is that like flat? Is that hilly? Is it snowy?
It's hilly. I'm in I'm in Orange County, Rip.
Oh, I keep thinking you're in Rifle, Colorado.
No, I haven't been in Rifle since 2016, but I did live outside of Boulder after that. But no, but there's hills here in Mission Viejo. So it's a lot of hills. There's a lot of hiking and like running and lifting weights and all that stuff. But I do a lot of walking, lots of walking.
What did you have for breakfast today?
I had my green smoothie. I do smoothies every day because honestly, I feel amazing when I do. So that's what I do.
So is it fair to say then you're not like an oatmeal girl?
I did oatmeal for many, many years. I love oatmeal. But I've just found that I can get so much more for myself. I am, when it comes to salads, I try to get as much as I can, but it's like, it's a lot of chewing. I'm going to be honest. I've said this before. I like to get as many greens but I put a lot of stuff in mine. I put a lot of greens. I put cabbage and cauliflower and broccoli every single morning. Then I put blueberries, pineapple, and cherries with soy milk. And that is my concoction, and it's mostly vegetables. It's so delicious.
It sounds like a dessert smoothie.
So good. Yes, I love it so much. But I really feel great.
I can tell you're getting giddy talking about it.
I love it. Yes, I was like, I can't wait till tomorrow morning to have my next one.
Oh my gosh. So you're about 2 hours behind where I am right now. So it's 11:48. Have you had lunch yet?
No, not yet.
Yeah.
Nope.
So what are you going to have for lunch? Do you know yet?
Lunch I've been doing my youngest son, Gabe, who's 25, asked me to do raw foods for a whole month. And so as we're closing that out. And so I found these things called raw wraps, and it's WRAWP.com. It's all whole foods. It's up here in LA. And they can mail them. They're delicious. And so I've been using those and putting all sorts. I've made, I sprouted lentils. I've done different types of, I'll put in different types of sauces. It just depends what it is I'm looking for, but we'll put in greens and we'll put in raw like bell peppers, a variety of different things. So yeah, I've kind of ventured into dehydrated foods that I didn't really do a lot before. I'm looking forward to eating more cooked foods again. The soy milk is the only thing that hasn't been raw for the most part, but and then I'll have some fruit. I have some pears and some Honeycrisp apples out here, and that'll probably go along with the wrap.
All right. Got this nice message from Chris saying, this has been an incredible video with so much information. Thank you, Rip and Dr. Marbas. We love what you're doing. Keep it up. and God bless all.
Thank you.
Isn't that nice?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I want you to know, Chris, how much I appreciate all of you guys for tuning in and being part of these Facebook Friday Lives. We appreciate you guys. And so, Laurie, I appreciate you. I appreciate your wealth of information that you impart so generously. Thank you so much. It's great to have you as a sister in the all things whole food plant-based.
Thank you. And I'm sure I'm going to say that what everyone here is like, thank you for everything you've done. I mean, you've carried the torch for many, many years and sharing your experience and the platform with people like myself. So thank you.
Oh, you're more than welcome. All right, Laurie, I think our time today is up. So I'll let you go get that wrap.
Otherwise, I'm using wraps from you, Rip. I do love I've got lots of your stuff. The chili and
well, just you wait. Just you wait. We got some new milks that are hitting the market in Whole Foods nationally in 2 weeks.
Oh, all right. I see a video in my future sharing those.
And online, but these are the cleanest, most whole, also fortified milks ever.
Really? Are you doing soy milks as well? Like a soy milk?
No, we're not doing a soy yet, but right now we've got a pure oat. We've got a pure almond. We've got a oat almond blend and an oat walnut blend.
Oh, really?
And the only ingredients are like water, oats, water almonds, water oats, walnuts. Yeah. Really cool.
Yeah. I'm very tickled about that.
Yeah. No stabilizers, no emulsifiers, no oils, no refined sugars, none of the junk that literally 95% of the industry uses.
Yeah.
So just hold on. I'll show you quickly what it's going to look like.
Okay. I can't wait to see it. This is very exciting. You're going to make me have oatmeal in the morning.
Well, this is just 2 of the 4, but you can see the fun packaging there.
Oh, wow.
Right?
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. And then you can see on the side here, right there. Yeah. So you see only these ingredients: water, oats, dates, and then you can see the fortification.
Oh, excellent. Calcium, salt, B12.
We got the B12, the D3, and then calcium, and then just a little bit of salt.
If you ever did any iodine in there, that would be good too. Just a little bit. Just throwing that out there.
You're good. Good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
We'll take that. All right, everybody, have a fantastic weekend. We'll see you sometime soon, probably on a Friday.
Thanks, everyone.